Hey there, this is Birch, and I want to just go in a little bit about ideas that were maybe good ideas at the time, but then kind of failed on execution. And this one is personal taste. So fair warning, you may feel completely different about this. It's totally fine. But I think there are at least some sales figures and some general kind of interest to back up at least why I felt the way I felt. So here goes. So back in, and now I'm going to get the dates wrong, but about 2000, I want to say 15, 14, probably right around that time period, we started the transition as part of Rick Remender's run of Captain America that we were going to see Falcon take over as Captain America, that he was going to take up the shield and take up the name, and he was going to be Captain America. And the idea was pretty solid, I think, in that the Falcon had been a long term supporting cast member of Cap, proven himself as a functional member of the Avengers and a very, heroic in his own right. Also had a lot of the right elements of being a hero. Falcon was, he had powers, but he wasn't like a Hulk level of power. Kind of more like, Hawkeye of a lot of kind of self trained skills, definitely flew around, had the relationship with Red Wing and everything, but it was he was not he was a self-made man, I think is the best way to put it, which fits very nicely within Captain America. And so and there'd been a lot of rumblings about why hasn't when Cap has left the Shield or retired as Cap or one thing or another, why not Falcon? You know, and I think that there was a little bit of an effort at Marvel to kind of right a decision that was made back when Bucky took over as Captain America. When Captain America died after Civil War, there's this idea that the Falcon maybe should have been in that spot instead, and so let's go ahead and try that out. So I think it was a solid idea. I think as a in terms of anything else, I mean, why not? It's comics, and it fit is the best way to put it. So why didn't it work? Well, first of all, you may this is that matter of opinion thing. I didn't think it worked, and sales for the book certainly kind of stumbled, and it never felt like Marvel really found their footing with Falcon, Captain America. And so why? So let's look a little bit at what happened. So Rick Remender had taken Cap off of Brubaker and kind of immediately thrust him into the World War Z kind of dimension, very sci-fi story. Introduced a kid that was Zola's son that Captain America raised, so he's kind of like he had a son. And then Rick Remender was clearly setting the stage from the very beginning to get Captain America kind of aged out of the picture, head of Shield, kind of taking over from Nick Fury, who'd gotten off the board, and bring Falcon into that role. If you go back and you read issue number 1 of Remender's run, you can see that he's setting it up. And Rick Remender, I think, is an excellent storyteller who, a lot like Chris Claremont back in the day, he juggles a lot of things in the air at once, and he is thinking long term. He sets things up for a very big story. So the problem with it was, number one, it came very, very quickly on the heels of Bucky being Cap. So we had just gone through a storyline where Cap had died and Bucky had taken the mantle, and it didn't really work, and so it was very soon after that. I mean, about 5 years less than we just had a replacement for Cap. So a lot of people were really wanting to see Cap be Cap. They wanted, not classic Captain America adventures, but they wanted some really heroic Steve Rogers saving the world kind of stories. And instead, we got kind of sci-fi Cap, and then we got a very bizarre villain that Remender had set up from his X-Force run, sort of. And we aged Cap, Steve immediately, and then we put Falcon into the role, and he took the shield, and we got a little hint in Remender's run that there was a traitor within within Captain America's kind of characters. We never really got a good payoff for that. And the first appearance of Falcon as Captain America, being that character, came not in Captain America, but actually in Axis, which is another Remender's run, and he was suddenly leading the Avengers. And it was weird. So first off, Falcon, who has a long Marvel history, has been written a certain way and had a certain personality and certain character. Suddenly, in the first time he gets the suit, he's immediately the leader of the Avengers, which seems odd, and his personality has changed. They're making Falcon almost more of a drill sergeant like character. He's barking orders, kind of a stern, kind of a slightly more stern and aggressive version of Steve. And the problem was this wasn't Falcon. This wasn't the personality that we've seen from the character. There's nothing wrong with Falcon being a leader. He'd been the leader in various issues of the Avengers, but his whole personality suddenly seemed very kind of hard edged, like a drill sergeant. It wasn't the Falcon that we saw in Brubaker's run or even Remender's run. And I think part of what happened was in Axis, the storyline was people were starting to, their personalities were flipping. That was kind of the background to the event. And we were seeing kind of emotions run hot. And so the first time we see Falcon as Cap, he's kind of already being tainted by this Red Skull's personality swapper, taking onslaught. Don't ask. There's a whole Axis is a whole thing. But I think Remender wrote him that way on purpose because it fit the storyline of Axis. But then other writers who came in and used Falcon in their stories as Cap kept that Axis personality, kept him kind of aggressively being overly kind of serious and barking at people. And when Mark Waid picked him up for Avengers, it was the Falcon. The personality of Falcon was the kind of the personality swap Remender had done. It wasn't Falcon, and Waid is definitely a historian, knows his Marvel comics, has a lot of history with them, but he wasn't writing the Falcon like 30 years of the Falcon. It just came across as odd. And so then we got, Nick Spencer came in and we got some Falcon stories, or we got some Cap stories, some Falcon stories. And it again, the Falcon, he seemed like the tone was all wrong. There was immediately some, you're not really Cap. And we were like going to immediately go into a story of, we left off with Sam earned the shield and was Cap. And then kind of the first stories were, oh, Cap, a bunch of people don't like him as Captain America. And so now he's on the defensive, having to prove himself, and, kind of a little bit of racism that they would play into it. And it never allowed Sam as Cap to be Cap. It never allowed him to have a classic adventure either. You wanted to see him with the costume and the shield go out there and really save the day, fight a classic, or, fight even a lame Captain America villain and be heroic and be successful. But instead, we got stories where he was kind of down at the border, and then, some more racism comes into play, and it's, he's kind of, people are saying, give back the shield, you're not really Captain America. And then, we get the actual Steve Rogers is de-aged back to his youth, but he's also a sleeper agent for Hydra, a secret Nazi at the time, and so there's more dynamic of Falcon kind of having to fight against that, and he never got to be the hero that the Falcon is. There's some amazing good Falcon stories in his own title and in Captain America of him saving the day and doing awesome things. But when he actually gets on the big stage in the costume with the shield to be the Captain America that he could be, it's immediately kind of downplayed, cast under a shadow, kind of an ugliness to it, and we never got that classic heroic story. And it's just a case of setting something up after a long time and then fumbling the football on the 2-yard line. We never got the amazing story that would have set him up to be amazing. And so there you go. I think, again, people may have a difference. I've never actually met anybody who came in and said, I really loved what they did with Sam as Captain America. I've just never seen it, never heard it. And I think the Falcon now as a character needs a bit of almost rehab to bring the character back to this awesome, deep well-rounded figure. But part of it has to be somebody has to come back in and make his personality likable. The character was written to be very unlikable for a lot of the Cap run, and even after there was kind of a angry edginess to the character that just wasn't there for a good 25 years. And I think a lot of it springs from what Reminder set up. People misinterpreted a little bit and just kept the character in this kind of odd, altered state. It would be like if everybody wrote Tony Stark as kind of more overly arrogant and a drunk, based off of what happened with Axis, and forgot that Stark was kind of a resilient guy who, out of grit, could create something and be an inventor. You forget that whole part of his personality. So let me know what you think. Did you love the Sam Wilson Captain America run? Do you agree with me that it didn't land the way it was supposed to land, and why? What is your theory if you don't think it landed? Um, Give me some comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe if you'd like, and tell your friends, and notifications and all the rest. Would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.